Hey guys, I hope that you are doing well today. We're continuing our journey in Romans chapter 3, and man, I love Romans 3 because it kind of lets us know where we all stand in God's eyes. It kind of lets us know what playing field that we are all on. Because if you read, as you read Romans 2, you might think, you know what, golly, Jewish people. Paul's talking terribly about Jewish people. Maybe Gentiles are actually better off than Jewish people. And then you get to the first 8 verses of Romans 3 that we discussed last week, and it's like, oh man, well, Gentile people are pretty bad too, and so maybe Jewish people are better off. But what Paul makes clear in this portion of Romans chapter 3 and verses 9 through 20 is where we are in today. He makes it very clear that Jews and Gentiles are both human, and therefore they are both sinful and on equal playing ground when it comes to God and what he thinks and about them. And no matter if they are Jew or Gentile, they are still under sin. It's not that humans just commit sin. It's that we are under sin. And Paul wants them to know that. Paul wants the Jewish people to know that the historical advantage of being God's chosen people doesn't set them free of their responsibility before God. He wants them to know that we're all separated from God, that we are all prisoners under sin. This is the idea of universal sin, that in light of Jesus, we are all in the category of the wicked. And some of these scriptures are talking about people that are in the category of the wicked. And Paul wants us to know that is everyone, that all of us are wicked. We are all depraved. We are all sinful. There's not one person that is righteous, not even one, Paul says. Being righteous means having the ability to restore relationships and be sinless ourselves. And we can't do that. So none of us are righteous. We don't have the ability to be made right with God on our own. So therefore, none of us are righteous. And he wants us to understand that, hey, there's no one who understands. There's no one who seeks God all the time and in their flesh. They're all have turned away. There's not even one person who does what is good. Paul wants us to understand that some of our sin plays itself out in our speech and in our words. Some of our sin plays itself out in how we treat other people. We harm other people with our words and our actions. Sometimes we're violent towards other people. He talks about how the sinful people, all of us, we struggle with truth telling a lot of times, right? Our throat is an open grave that deceives with our tongues. We manipulate, we deceive with our tongues, that our lips spread poison like snakes. We spread these poisonous lies and gossip about people. Our mouths are full of cursing and bitterness and tearing people down right there. Our feet are swift to shed blood. We commit violence toward other people. And ultimately, he says, they're looking in the wrong direction and there's no fear of God before their eyes. And because they don't fear God, they don't act like it. Because they don't follow God, they don't act like it. And the reason that we were given that every part of our body, every part of our being, the intent is to glorify God and to serve people. That's the intent. To glorify God and to build up his people, to build up his body, to serve people. And so what we need to understand is that all of us before God are sinful. We are not one of us is righteous. We are all corrupt, and it twists and taints every part of our humanness. Sin, really, when you think about it, it's ungodliness because we don't seek him, we don't fear him, we don't make his glory our primary concern, we don't leave room for him, we don't love him with all of our hearts and our soul and our mind and our strength. And ultimately, it's because we put ourselves before him. We enthrone ourselves rather than allowing him to be on the throne of our life. A lot of sin is simply self-deification and self-idolatry. That's what sin is putting ourselves in the place where God should be put. It's pervasive, it's universal, it affects everything. And because of that, no one can escape God's judgment. No one can be justified by the works of the law, Paul wants people to know. Because what the law does is it brings knowledge of our sin, but it doesn't actually save us from under sin. It condemns us because it lets us know how we should be living, and we break it. So it brings awareness of how short of God's requirements that we fall. But we can't be saved by what we do. We can't be saved by the works of the law. We don't have the power on our own to evict sin out of our lives. So many people thought that salvation came from obedience to the law and what you did and who you were and what lineage you came from. And Paul wants them to know, hey, in the Greek it says there's no flesh that is justified even in its flesh, not even circumcised flesh that came from a Jewish person. No flesh, no works of the law, nothing we can do can make us right before God. Because of Christ, it's not the covenant that saves us. It's not doing what the law says that saves us, because we can't save ourselves. And so this sin and wrath are universal. But here's the good news. God's justification and God's acceptance of you and I, those things are universal too because of Jesus. Ultimately, nothing that we do could have liberated us from under the power and being prisoners of sin. So God sent a liberator for us. God sent someone to liberate us from the power of sin, and his name is Jesus. And so as we have faith in Jesus and we're justified, and then God is working out our sanctification, we should be dedicated to produce works that glorify and please God and serve other people. But even when we do, we can't take credit for them and should never believe that it's those things that make us acceptable to God. It is only God working in us. That's the reason why those things, that fruit comes out of our life, that those works even come out of our lives, is because of the work that God is doing in us. And so what Paul did here was he tore down the pride and privilege of nationalism among Jewish people, but he also let Gentile people know, hey, just because you're accepted in doesn't mean that you're not sinful. And man, it's just, we need to realize that we're all in the same playing field. This brings to my mind the parable that Jesus tells of the Pharisee and the sinner when they're praying, and how the Pharisee prays and he points to this guy over here and he says, man, I'm thankful I'm not like anybody else. I'm thankful I'm not like that guy, who people who do what is evil. I fast twice a week. I give my 10%. I go to church. I serve in the community. I do all of those things. And then the sinner's over there saying, God, have mercy on me because I know there's nothing good inside of me. I'm a sinner no matter what I do. And Jesus says that one of those two men are justified. Which one do you think it is the question that he posed to the people. And so what we need to understand is that nothing that we do good is on our own as followers of Christ. Is because of the work that God is doing in us and through us. That we are all sinful. That we're all on the same playing field. That doesn't matter how many times we've been to church or served the community or what our nationality is or heritage is. We are all born sinful. It's universal and it affects everything. However, because of God and because of the liberator he sent for us in Jesus, his acceptance and his justification are universal too for all of those who choose to believe. So that's good news to leave you on today. I hope you've enjoyed this portion of Romans 3, and we will continue and finish Romans chapter 3 next week. We'll see you guys then.